So something I thought might be interesting to do today was sort of have a more candid, open discussion, which might prefigure doing maybe like Instagram live stuff.
Oh, cool.
Which I want to get into after sort of I get these podcasts out, the first like 4 or 5 podcasts.
Yeah.
So
That's a good idea.
I wanted to like I sort of just like cobbled together this like terrible Google document to sort of try to explain as like, I don't know, straightforward and simply as I could muster, like the mysterious ethos of like the collective, like why me and Davis decided to do this. Amongst, you know, the other reasons of there being a pandemic and we wanted something to do to like put out our music and there was no performance happening. So like that was partially inspiration. And Davis and I had been making music together beforehand for quite a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's sort of like all of this esoteric sort of stuff that's like in the research publications that I'm attempting to do my best at synthesizing and explaining, which is, yeah, I guess my personal like approach to music, but also one that I think is like quite underrepresented in contemporary music production, and one that is like it's a tradition. It's like, you know, hundreds of years old, I guess, so to speak. And I'm just sort of me and Davis are trying to synthesize these things together. And present music in a different context. So yeah, let me try to, I mean, does that sound like something you guys would be interested in? Would you want me to go
For
through?
sure.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I'm not sure. I might skip around with the order. And again, like I'm also discovering a lot of this as I'm going along. Don't read my shorthand notes; they're terrible. But I'll explain some of the stuff better. So yeah, so new things keep coming up, and it's sort of like an organic process.
Yeah, I like about it.
But one of the most recent ones was from the book recommendation that I put on Discord, The Harmonies of Heaven and Earth by Jocelyn Goodwin, which is a chart from that book. And I'm not sure if any of you have gotten into it or past the first chapter. It goes off the deep end after the first chapter, which is interesting. That is like the quite extreme side of the tradition. But he does a brilliant job in the first chapter of sort of creating an introduction of the kind of music that is like of interest for the collective. And he does so through comparative analysis to psychological therapy. So he has these different tiers, which aren't inherently hierarchical, but they are, you know, not one is not inherently better than the other one, but essentially, in order to really get to the next one, you have to sort of go through them in order. You can't like start at this one and then just like jump to this one. It's sort of like a process of moving through each of them as a listener, as a composer, as a patient in psychology. Although I don't like the term patient. It's a bad medical term. But anyway, the first one he discusses
Listener.
is radio 1 therapy, which has really no psychological equivalent, but it's basically, he's talking about the phenomenon of people who are in comas that they play music to, wake up from comas, and also like have less cognitive efficiency when they wake up from comas.
Oh, wow.
So it's just this phenomena. They just started playing radio music to people that were comatose. So yeah, it just sort of is the gateway of speaking of this idea of like music exciting the the part of the anatomy that we don't quite understand. You know, we call it the soul or whatever, but it's like, you know, it has this sort of, you know, magical potency to it, which is still mystifying in modern medicine.
That's really cool.
The second tier is the level of becoming conscious and consenting to participate in music. So that is, you see that in like, it's a little bit depressing when you see it sometimes, but you see it in like old people's homes when they're like all playing instruments together. They're like getting people to engage and like play along with the music. So it's like, it works wonders. Like this is what a lot of music therapy is primarily focused on, is getting people to engage in music. Getting people with Parkinson's to like somehow stand up and dance, getting people with Alzheimer's to like sing along with music because they, for whatever reason, have like a vast storage of memory of music from their adolescence. And, you know, despite their complete lack of cognitive function, they can sing along with music from that time. So this becoming conscious and consenting to participate in music, it's very apparent in musical therapy, but it is something that is, extends beyond that. It's a matter of listening with music and not classifying it as other, but taking it into a part of yourself, not consuming it, but like allowing, an engagement to start to happen.
That reminds me of your podcast with James there. I've been thinking about that podcast a lot lately.
The second one?
Yeah, just, you know, consuming versus experiencing, sort of.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'll probably rehash some of those ideas as quickly as I can.
Yeah. I got to grab my son, so I got to go on pause, but keep going.
Okay, tell Neil I say hi.
All right.
So, so there is this sort of, I don't know, there's kind of hesitancy to actually participate in music sometimes. And that's largely due to how music is being presented to us. It a lot of times blocks participation. And also, you know, culturally, we have the idea of singing along to music. We have that voice from the superego that's like, don't sing along, you'll look stupid. And the only thing that really releases that is, you know, getting absolutely blitzed in a bar and being in a group of people and being able to like sing along with something. So it's quite a barrier in you know, our culture today. But yeah, very important. And the next is the arousal of specific emotions. So behavior modification counseling, and you find this in a lot of popular music, right? It's just like music that's like, this is party music, right? That's the most like evident trope of like, yeah, we're gonna go out tonight, we're gonna like, it arouses that emotion, it triggers it in you. Or you know, if you like want to put yourself in a good mood, that you listen to a certain, we do this unconsciously all the time. We use music to arouse specific emotion. There is a deeper level of that, which is exploring emotion leading to catharsis. So the example of this is like, it's very similar to arousing specific emotions, but it's sort of an alchemical idea that if you're feeling quite depressed or sad, you engage in emotion or music which is like as melancholy as possible, so that you bring that state to a culmination, and it like sort of fizzes out, right? It reaches its apotheosis and then sort of dissipates after that. Right? It becomes its opposite, so to speak. So you listen to something like, the example that Jocelyn Goodwin uses is John Dowland's "Flow My Tears," which is like an incredibly sad song, like over the top melancholy, but purposely so, because it's like so sad, you reach this sort of catharsis in listening to it. And all of those, like, you know, tragically sad things in you come up. And it's the same thing in psychoanalysis, right? In like traditional Freudian psychoanalysis, you're going there and you're trying to expel all of those emotions that culminates in like a, supposed to be like a realization, um, uh, because you're letting it all out. You're letting it just flow through. And then lastly is the exploration of the self through music, which is the transpersonal psychology, which is Maslow, Carl Jung, and this is understanding the significance of music as it relates to the symbolism, which has been mostly found in religious institutions, but also transcends religious institutions. It's the sort of, the, how would you say? Well, it's symbolic engagement with the world, and with the self, and understanding the collective nature of the human experience, so to speak. This is the most difficult one to articulate. So like the purpose, a lot of this is in the RGMS is trying to develop methods to engage with this. Not to say that we don't like advocate engaging with all of these. The idea is to like create a synthesis of trying to engage with all of them equally. But conceptually, it's the diagnosis of culturally being trapped in, number 3 really, is where culturally we appear to be most trapped. And number 5 claims to be in, academic circles, but academic circles really actually fail at 5 because they fail to engage with the public at all. So it becomes not transpersonal, it becomes like individual again. So anyway, the reason that we chose the collective is sort of in the polemical reaction to the concept of the ego in the West. So, hi Nico. So, and yeah, if you guys have something to say, please interject. And if you have to leave at any point, please leave. And if I'm going on too long and drawing, tell me to shut up.
Shut up.
Yeah, let me know if anything is like confusing or interesting, or if you disagree. Like, I would hope that you disagree with some things.
I got a notes app open of some stuff I was thinking about.
Sure, yeah. What do you got?
So let's see. I'll just go with what we're talking about currently, because otherwise I'll confuse myself. So the number 5, the exploration of the self through music,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like just very personally, when I was like 10, right, I heard Green Day and heard them say like, heard American Idiot for the first time, and that like, I don't know, that like flipped a switch or something in my brain. And then I started, instead of music just being something like, oh, this is on, this is nice, and that was it, it turned into like an emotion, which then turned into like, oh my God, this is, obviously I'm 10, so I'm trying to find my identity, but it turned into, oh, this is who I am. And I like tried to like find myself within the ethos of the music, because it just made sense to me to do that inherently, like nobody told me. And I feel like, and I could be wrong with this theory, but I feel like probably maybe a lot of people here in the chat may have similar experiences, which then kind of lead you down this path of like, well, I got this much level of intimacy with music. I want to explore this more and more and more, and really like I just want to keep going down this
Yeah.
rabbit hole almost. So that's what I was, yeah, that's
That's
what I'm
great.
thinking about.
I think, yeah, because I can relate to that as well. And I think part of the trap, though, with consumerism is people get stuck in that identity that is formed as adolescents because it's so potent. And then you lose like true exploration of the self because it's always like enmeshed in some cultural artifact, Green Day in your case. But I don't know, you sort of have this phenomenon with, I don't know, I've encountered like in my like music, like playing on Long Island, there's a big population of older people who no longer listen to music that's like post 1970. And they're always like reminiscing like the glory days of the 70s, the 60s. And their whole identity is sort of wrapped up in the music of that time. And it always sort of feels like out of phase, like with their, with their understanding of their self in the present. It's always a looking back. So the thing with the Green Day, I think, like for me, is like the initiation into that exploration of the self. But what has to happen is a continuation after that, which is something that the music itself doesn't inherently promote because it's being filtered through the spectrum of the cultural machine, the music industry, which like we all have qualms with, I'm sure. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure. One of my biggest, I think, inspirations for like sticking with it and trying to keep exploring and trying to dive into more stuff was David Bowie, because when he was working on his last record, he said, oh yeah, they're like, oh, what influenced you to do this? He's like, oh yeah, Kendrick Lamar. And he's like he's like he's a senior citizen at that point. And he's still, and at that time, like Kendrick Lamar wasn't like, he was like, it was To Pimp a Butterfly at that point, but it wasn't at like on every radio station. So to see that this guy who obviously liked what he did was like trying to stay in touch with like, I don't know, what was on the cutting edge of hip hop at the time is kind of, he wasn't just like, oh yeah, the Rolling Stones in the early 60s, that's the only real music for me. He continued along the path, and then that kind of made me want to keep continuing.
And Bowie,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, yeah, a good example is like an artist with a large discography, because people are stuck. Some people are stuck in their early releases, and then some people are stuck in their later releases, and that's just another version of kind of being stuck in one era or time or something. Whereas, like, I don't know if you heard Van Morrison's latest album. So like the first song's hilarious. It's just he's just singing over and over again. Have you heard my latest record project? So it's like really trying to put the audience in the present. It just seems like an artist like Van Morrison would like have the hardest time putting his audience in the present moment.
Wow, yeah.
Because they're all stuck on his earlier releases, right? So
yeah.
But that's kind of like an example of what you're talking about, like within like the pop artists.
And David Bowie is a great example of the self through music with his last album, Black Star, because he's exploring his own death. Sorry, he knows, and like that album is just like littered with symbolism, which is the whole purpose of transpersonal psychology, is the engagement with symbols and understanding that. So, Bowie is also an anomaly in some respects, because he's able to grip popular attention while being so like in the depths of the transpersonal, which you don't find. It's rare.
Yeah, he's a good example of, pushing his audience or his listeners to explore themselves.
Yeah, but this brings me to the point of the ego, because the thing that gets caught up, like if you read comments on David Bowie YouTube videos, there's always this issue that people miss the point of the symbols because they can't extricate it from the individual. So people engage with David Bowie's music by interpreting the symbols as like they understand it through his reflection of his own mortality, rather than through the collective engagement with mortality and death. So a lot of times, like the ego of the composer, or the ego that the listener projects onto the composer, because the artist or the creator goes by their own name, sort of blocks the listener from accessing exploration of their self through the music, because they're only able to understand the exploration of the artist of their self through the music. It cuts them off from their own articulation of it. So like we decided, so, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just jumping on that thought. I mean, like Bowie also like tried to detach his music from his self through the persona of Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah, of course. He tried. I mean, but it's always Bowie. So like, right?
Yeah. But I feel like that act is for the sake of the listener as well, to remove the idea of the music from the individual David Bowie who lives on this earth.
Right.
And, conceive of it as coming from outer space or from a divine transcendent world.
Exactly.
I don't know. I thought it's a cool move.
Yeah. So I guess we tried to take that a step further, which is the idea of the RGMS and pseudo anonymity. It's like, everything is just released under RGMS to sort of startle or shock the listener into like being unable to access the mediation of ego, and turn the music back in on themselves rather than on the composer. So that's the conceptual idea behind that. I'll keep going a bit with this.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
One thing, like when I was in high school, my buddy Alex, we'd always go for car drives or whatever, and he'd have like a new CD or something. Mm-hmm. And he just like would refuse to tell me who it was or what the album was. And we listened to it for like the whole thing. Like I'd be like asking him the whole time, like, who is this? Who is this? He just wouldn't tell me. So it's just like he wanted me to experience it without like it having like an identity or
yeah.
I love
without me like kind of just jumping to conclusions or whatever. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like for RGMS?
That's incredible. Yeah, that's the concept, right? Yeah, because you start to detach yourself from the potential of the exploration of the self, because you get so occupied with the intellectual side of things and trying to understand the historical context and like who this person is. That stuff is great, but it also, you can get consumed by it and lose sight of the symbolic aspect of it. So yeah, I mean, that's brilliantly intuitive of them to do such a thing.
This reminds me of a thing of not a battle, but basically I've been thinking a lot about conscious versus subconscious, and I know there's like tons of literature I could read on this, but the main idea I'm getting is like subconscious is kind of really thinking about stuff, and like if you tap into it, then it's just kind of like a bunch of not voices in your head, but just like trying to like work through stuff where like people normally would, just kind of act in the moment versus thinking about something before they do it. And I think it's akin to what we're talking about, because when it comes down to music, I find a lot of the time there's kind of almost a battle in my head where it's, well, who is this? How do they relate to me? Is this my friend? are they getting more streams than me? You know, like all that going on, instead of just listening to music the way that you do maybe almost like as a kid. Like I remember hearing the YMCA when I was a kid, and that was just like the best thing that existed. Just hearing, like, I didn't know what any of it was. I'm just like, this is it.
This is it.
So I feel I don't know where I'm going with it,
No,
but
no,
basically, yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I think oh wait, I lost it. Hold on, I'll get it back. You were talking about...
I'll interject for a second that I feel like,
yeah,
for me, a very important part of being able to make music is kind of trying to find that naivety of listening to music in my own music. Is if I'm too tapped into that intellectual, then it's just going to turn out awful. Or just not happen at all. So I think a big part of making music can be also trying to find that, like, child ear of listening to music, where you're not thinking about the constructs or frames that it fits into, and you're just listening to it as sound.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, like it's the reason we make music is because we fell in love with it at some point. Like it moved us. Like I am still just trying to be the Beatles. You know, like that's like my musical philosophy. It's like, well, what would the Beatles do?
yeah.
And I love it, you know. But I feel that I am always searching for my like most generous posture towards music, and like I'll get stoned and listen to something that I'm working on to like see if I love it in that way.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Right. You want to see how you feel in different states of mind, because I think that's the hardest thing about composition for me is like you become so intimate with the material you can't view it from a removed perspective anymore. So yeah, changing your state of mind. I like, yeah, seeing like, do I like it in this altered state? And that is actually something I want to talk about with rituals, but I have that queued for a little bit later on. And maybe we'll continue this another time if this is going on too long. Please, if you have to leave, leave. But I wanted to go back to, what Aaron and Noah were saying. You reminded me of what I wanted to say is that's part of the reason we do the Moss series, the meditation, because sort of a function of one of the many functions of meditation is to take that intellectual, chatter, that clamor that is trying to understand the context of the music and sort of, like bring it within your will to silence it, because that is something that's like culturally, like it's the super ego, something that is just like we are bombarded with on a cultural scale constantly. So it becomes a very prominent voice in our heads. And meditation sort of strives to become in control of the voice in your head, so that you can, for a second, listen to something through the lens of the child again, right? Because the child is like, the archetype of the child, the innocent, is the least bombarded by the cultural superego, which is all of those voices of like, who is this? How many streams are they getting, etc. So yeah, meditation, Moss music is sort of, that's why that is the only project that we have right now that's collective oriented, because it's like, that's the prism of experience, the spectrum. If you want to get to this, you have to first become conscious of, the contents of your mind and be able and realize that you have control over them, so to speak.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm gonna make a move if that's okay, because I need to get some food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come back if you want.
Hi, James.
Yeah.
Hi, James.
Thanks for coming, James.
Great to see you all.
Bye.
Yeah, and
Right.
if you guys want to just, if you have to go and you feel too timid to interject, you can just peace out. Also, just keep talking to myself.
Can I ask something? Do you think meditation is like the only form for doing what you're saying, or like could we take dance for an example as like, because dance is like that embodiment of the music.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's say like maybe we can make a dance album. Who knows? But it's like still getting. Yeah.
I think dance is a very good example of that. But this is hard to navigate. The thing about dance is, I mean, this is maybe a good movement to the Dionysius and Apollo. Dance music literally is Dionysian music. You're being possessed by the music. You're allowing it to move your body. Some would say like the movement of dance is like the sort of imitation of the movement of the etheric body when experiencing music. And some more esoteric things. But yeah, the reason I think the focus isn't on dance music is because, again, some of this is quite polemical, is that dance music is far overshadows culturally, the meditative music. So it's a completely valid pathway, but yeah, we're trying to react to the cultural landscape, where dance music is much more apparent and overt. People engage with that already.
Definitely.
And then we have meditation music is rampant, of course, but you listen to it and there's like only one type. I mean, just listen to Aaron's meditation piece of music and you don't hear anything like that that's branded as meditation music. Aaron's piece is the most out there meditation music, but it is still meditation. It's just a different form of it. Sorry to pick on you, Aaron, but your track is it's so startling to listen to it for the first time, but then like so profound in repeated listens because it dialogues with that cultural archetype so right on the nose.
Well, thank you for one, and two, just an interesting point about dance music and dancing in general. You said something about you have to kind of get drunk with your buddies at a karaoke bar to engage with music and sing. There's definitely, I'm not sure, I think for me, honestly, dancing is scarier to do in public for me than singing is for me to do in public. So
yeah,
like I need that like extra shove to like go like out and dance and like just let the music kind of take over.
Mm-hmm.
So just like with music, with dance, there's the super ego implications where like, how are people going to think of me? Is this dance still relevant? How is this dance viewed? Is this dance too old to be doing? Is this dance old enough to be doing? Like I don't know. It's just interesting to kind of compare the two.
Yeah, man. No, yeah, seriously, it's there.
I used to. There was a math rock, post-rock band in Thunder Bay where I grew up, and I got to know the song so well. But you can't sing along to instrumental rock band, so I just got to know like all the time signature changes so well. I just danced to it like on the spot.
That's awesome.
And it felt transcendent. Like it was just really cool to dance to a band like that and just know it so well and not worry about what anyone thinks, because obviously they're not trendy dance moves or anything.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But it takes you out of just the pattern of walking around and doing shit, and suddenly your arms are doing things that
Yeah.
often find.
I'd be down for an RGMS dance album.
I think it's a great thought.
Yeah.
Puppetry.
Right. You're being moved by the music, right? Yeah, I don't want to get too much into this, but that is a really like potent question that Amina poses.
Yeah, can I say one more thing about it? I feel like the idea of the Dionysian like being overcome by the music in our, like, let's say Western culture is just because the lack of ritual or any sort of connection to any sort of like idea around what the dance, you know, like, because you have another, and religion is the best example of this. There's like a ritual understanding of what the music is trying to do, and there's like a form, and becomes a lot more like Apollonian, right?
Right, and so the idea is that meditation music is more of the Apollonian form. So we are polemically reacting to and polemic like means like reacting to something, like opposing it because of the conditions of the time, right? Not as like the de facto truth, but like this is what's happening, so we need to react to it in order to bring it back into balance. So yeah, the meditation is Apollonian reaction to the pervasivity of Dionysian music, which extricates itself from ritual, which is a modern phenomenon, because if you look even at indigenous cultures, all music is tied up in ritual. Music doesn't exist outside of ritual. Only in like, you know, the last couple hundred years, probably starting with classical music actually, more so romantic music, does music become separate from ritual. Whereas before it's tied up in the institution of the church, and then before that it's tied up in the institution of, you know, religion, such as in Greek and, you know, the Greek tragedies and whatnot. Yeah, I don't want to go too far into that. Does that make sense though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of wild. My college, they didn't allow people to have sex because they thought it might lead to dancing.
Yeah, man, you gotta be careful. You never be too careful.
Would quick question.
Yeah.
I'd I guess it's a statement. I'd argue that in most cases, if ritualistic doesn't solely mean religious, I'd say music right now is still very ritualistic. Like, oh, I'm gonna do the dishes. Oh, I'm gonna go meditate. Oh, I'm gonna go for a drive, and I need the music to support me driving because this is what I do.
Right. But it's individually a lot of times ritualistic. There are still rituals in live performances. Like there's a litany of rituals, but it's less. I think it's less so. Right. It's not ritualistic, but it's just like become more and more individually focused and less, symbolically oriented. There's not really much symbolism in driving in your car or listening to music, but it is a ritual. You are right. That's a critical differentiation. It's a sliding scale. That's properly more, because we crave ritual, and the other problem is like being unconscious of the way in which we ritualistically engage with stuff. It's a very critical thing to be aware of how you are engaging with something. The same way you become aware of superego, right, which is that voice of the culture that speaks in your head. You become aware of where it's coming from, and then you can work with it. You become aware of like where your ritual is coming from, and then you can start to work with it and deepen the understanding, right? Deepening the understanding, working with it, is the exploration of the self through music. It's going deeper into that inner workings of the psyche. So let's see, what should we? There's a lot here. I know it's a lot. This is pretty good so far.
It's a lot, but it's fun.
Yeah, I love it. It's, you know, it's just, I find myself perpetually in a state of awe, of like thinking I knew more than I did, and then being like, wow, I didn't know anything. Yeah, it's funny just to always constantly reflect, you know, like when I was, you know, when we were studying music together, and I was listening to music, thinking I knew it all, like, but I was just like blindly consuming stuff.
In the words of 16-year-old Billy Joe Armstrong, all I know is that I don't know nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Words of a sage. So yeah, essentially, the RGMS project of achieving exploration of the self through music is by mediating the most potent representations of music through the culture, which is this concept of the balancing of Dionysus and Apollo. So we look at the culture and we can see that the Dionysian, which is that dance music archetype, the right brain, versus the Apollonian, which is the more mathematical, exacting, like rational approach to things. We can see these playing out in like what I would consider the 4 levels of music, like performance, composition, the engagement, and then the analysis. Or the analysis can also be likened to reflection, because there's always a process of reflection, because you're never always constantly in the music, right? It ends. It has to end eventually. Not John Cage's As Slow as Possible. That is still happening and will be happening for the next 600 years. But not every piece is like that. You could make an argument that it is, but we'll pin that. So yeah, you can see these archetypes of Dionysus and Apollo playing out in each of these things, and the sort of, I don't know, more esoteric concept behind this is bringing things into a balance, because balance is avoids pathology, which is an imbalance, right? Like a good example of that is, you know, something as simple as like emotional. You want to be a balanced emotional person. If you are a person who's known for having a violent temper, you will manifest suffering for yourself because that will affect the people around you. But that concept of favoring one thing over the other emotionally extends to the archetypal domain of Dionysus and Apollo. So conceptually, we try to become conscious of the role that these 2 archetypes are playing in these domains of music, and strive to sort of mediate a balance between the 2 of them, so that we can get the most good out of music. We can get the most potential out of music that we can. And then there's the Aristotle saying that the music that you listen to, that you engage with, that becomes reflective of your character. So, say that we solely engage with, performative music that's in the realm of Dionysus, as much of it is, that will somehow integrate itself into our character and will be subjected to the dangers of Dionysus, because as an archetype, it has its positive and its negative. And in the next podcast, me and Imina talk about this. But you could say the archetype of the pathological Dionysian is the hippie who overdoses on psychedelics, and loses touch with reality, really, and touch with themselves. It's just sort of like a total intoxication, and yeah, allowing you're not mediating what's coming in, right? You're just allowing it to act upon you, and then you're not reflecting as much as a byproduct of that. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any problems with that or questions about it? Or is that a bit too heady?
Is it possible it could have an impact? Well, I guess through what you just said it is, but like even though you don't reflect on it, it can still like have an impact for your future.
Yes. Yeah. I think the idea is that you by reflecting on it, you become aware of how it is affecting you, your character, and your future. But it's always acting on you in that way, just as the superego is always acting upon you because it's guiding your decision making. Right? If you were acting like making your decisions based off the superego, which you're unaware of, you're going to end up not where you want to be, because you're listening to the voice of the culture that's coming through you. So yeah, the reflection, is critical in making the path for yourself, like choosing to like say that you are in control. This is the exploration of the self, right? You find the totality of the self through the music, right? I think Noah's computer died. Yeah, and yeah, there's a lot. So I mean, perhaps we could save the methods for next time. I feel like that was pretty good.
Yeah, I got a piece.
I got a pee also. Did you say peace or pee?
Well, yes.
Both at the same time. Yes.